We are pounding them militarily. By the way, to the Houthis, this isn't a one-night thing. This will continue until you say, we're done shooting at ships, we're done shooting at assets.
Trump has invoked his war powers. More specifically, he has enacted Alien Enemies Act of 1798. As the name suggests, the act was passed in 1798, just 1 year after George Washington stepped down as the president. Since then, the act has been invoked only 3 times. First in 1812, then in World War I, and then in World War II. According to the Trump administration, this act is now being invoked to deport Venezuelan gang members from gangs like MS-13 and TDA. All the while this is happening, US bases and US carriers have started striking inside Houthi strongholds in Yemen. According to the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, these strikes are expected to only pick up in the coming days, and they'll continue until Houthis commit to stop attacking US vessels and US ships in the Red Sea. Here's the National Security Advisor himself sharing all the details.
Well, let's talk about the situation that we inherited in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. We have not had a U.S. warship transit that area in over 4 months. We haven't had a U.S.-flagged commercial vessel in over a year. 70% of global shipping has been diverted from 2 of the world's most strategic waterways, adding cost and complexity to global commerce. That's what we inherited. The president has decided that's completely unacceptable, but we're not going to do what the Biden administration did in terms of this kind of pinprick back and forth. We hit the Houthi leadership, killing several of their key leaders last night, their infrastructure, the missiles. This is essentially al-Qaeda with sophisticated Iranian-backed air defenses and anti-ship cruise missiles and drones that has attacked the entire global economy.
Okay.
President Trump showed leadership, and we just hit them with overwhelming force and put Iran on notice that enough is enough with its backing of the terrorists and providing them the most sophisticated weapons that have attacked our warships dozens and dozens of times. All of that alongside an offer of diplomacy in terms of all options are on the table for their nuclear program.
Now, Houthis are not very strong, but they've been blessed with a geographical location that sits right at the chokehold of one of the most important shipping lanes in the world, the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandab Strait. Using this gift from nature, Houthis have been attacking ships that are passing through this volatile chokehold ever since October of 2023, just a few weeks after Hamas carried out the October 7th attacks. Over time, these attacks have caused major economic damage to the global economy. In 2024 alone, Houthis inflicted an estimated $200 billion in damages globally. Shipping costs have increased 5-fold as vessels are being forced to detour around Africa, avoiding the Red Sea and the Suez Canal altogether. Rerouted journeys have raised the fuel consumption and added approximately $1 million in cost per trip. Additionally, because of the attack, the insurance rates for the transit through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea have surged 20-fold. In fact, here's the video Houthi terrorists released last year taking over a commercial ship and taking the crew hostage.
Shoot!
Now, on top of all this, they are labeled a terrorist organization by the US government, and rightly so, because this is their flag, literally. They literally have a slogan that says, "Death to America," on their flag. This is their lifelong mission. Clearly, they have some lofty goals, but all alone, Houthis are not an issue, especially for America, even with the geographical location they have. But countries like Iran, China, and Russia have been backing them secretly, providing them with weapons, missiles, and satellite data to target US and Western ships. That's the nature of the 21st century hybrid warfare. Luckily, we do have some benefits of being in the 21st century. We have President Trump on Twitter, and we also have the Houthi leader on Twitter, and they've been going back and forth ever since these strikes have started. Here's the statement Trump put out right after the strike. Today, I have ordered the United States military to launch decisive and powerful military action against the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. They have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American and other ships, aircrafts, and drones. Joe Biden's response was weak, so the unrestrained Houthi just kept going. It has been over a year since a US-flagged commercial ship safely sailed through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, or the Gulf of Aden. The last American warship to go through the Red Sea 4 months ago was attacked by the Houthis over a dozen times. Funded by Iran, the Houthi thugs have fired missiles at US aircraft and targeted our troops and allies. These relentless assaults have cost US and the world economy many billions of dollars, while at the same time putting innocent lives at risk. The Houthi attack on American vessels will not be tolerated. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. The Houthis have choked off shipping in one of the most important waterways of the world, grinding vast swaths of global commerce to a halt and attacking the core principle of freedom of navigation upon which international trade and commerce depends. Our brave warfighters are right now carrying out aerial attacks on the terrorist bases, leaders, and missile defenses to protect American shipping, air, and naval assets, and to restore navigational freedom. No terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world. To all the Houthi terrorists, your time is up, and your attack must stop, starting today. If they don't, hell will rain down upon you like nothing you have ever seen before. To Iran, support for Houthi terrorists must end immediately. Do not threaten the American people, their president, who has received one of the largest mandates in the presidential history, or worldwide shipping lanes. If you do, beware, because America will hold you fully accountable, and we will not be nice. Important point to point out here that many people miss is Iran tried actively assassinating Trump during the campaign season, during the elections. In fact, the situation got so bad that Trump couldn't fly his regular plane, but they kept flying the plane, pretending that Trump is using the same plane, while Trump was flying in a different plane using an alias just to avoid getting assassinated by Iranian agents here in the United States. Like, it is truly shocking how badly Iran did not want Trump to win. Now, we'll get to the Iranian response to this statement in just a second. But first, let's go over how Houthis responded, because the Houthis replied right under this tweet. That's the modern warfare and diplomacy, I guess. The Yemeni military account, which is apparently controlled by the Houthis, tweeted this: "Are these the rules for the United States? Will American interest in the region be fine? No, I promise you defeat." Then they linked an image that shows all the US troops in the different bases that we have all over the Middle East. Additionally, Houthis have also announced that the US ships are now banned from passing to the Bab al-Mandab Strait and the Red Sea. The way they're acting, it's like they own the strait, when in reality, they don't even have enough firepower to control their own country. As you can see from the screen, that's the whole map of Yemen, and Houthis control around 20 to 30% of the whole thing. There's a civil war that's technically still going on in the nation. Now, to their credit, they do control the part that's right adjacent to the Red Sea, and that's a huge benefit for all the blackmail that they're carrying out against the global commerce. On top of that, they also control some of the most populated areas of Yemen, which they have used to extort the population and fund their weapons purchasing spree. Now, these weapons are not just for the Red Sea. They have also used this in the Civil War and also used this to attack countries like Saudi and Israel. The US statements after the strike has been very clear. We only have one request for them. I guess you can call it a request. But we're basically asking them to stop attacking the ships in the Red Sea. That's it. US has no interest in getting involved in the Yemeni civil war. But instead of listening to that request, the Houthis are escalating. They're saying that they're gonna deal escalation with escalation, and they have banned US ships from entering the Red Sea. I truly think that Houthis are making a grave mistake because they're not following the situation in their own neighborhood. Around 20% of the US fleet is in this area, and they're prepared to meet escalation with escalation. You guys can pause the screen and read the whole situation report, but yeah, it's a lot of firepower we have in the region. And this was the message the defense secretary sent to the Houthis.
Well, it all went down because an era of peace through strength is back. Just like in his first term, President Trump had to deal with the weakness of President Obama and get rid of ISIS, and he did it more quickly than anybody else. We're sitting on 4 years of deferred maintenance from Joe Biden, where in particular, when you talk about the Houthis, they were allowed for over 100 times to shoot at U.S. Ships, to shoot at commercial shipping. 4 months ago, when we sent a ship through, it was shot at 17 times. Ships haven't been able to go through for over a year without being shot at. Freedom of navigation is basic. It's a core national interest. And President Trump has said, we will restore that and we will be unrelenting. I want to be very clear. This campaign is about freedom of navigation and restoring deterrence. The minute the Houthis say, we'll stop shooting at your ships, we'll stop shooting at your drones, this campaign will end. But until then, it will be unrelenting. We got the reports last night, Maria. The Houthi capital felt like an earthquake. Dozens and dozens of precision-heavy munitions dropping precisely on the targets that we wanted to hit, sending a very clear message. And the message is clear to Iran as well. And the president said it in his truth. Your support of the Houthis needs to end immediately. We will hold you accountable as the sponsor of this proxy. And I echo his statement. We will not be nice about it. This is not the Biden administration. The message is clear. We will come after the Houthis until they stop shooting at our ships, and the Iranians better stay out of it.
Now, this firepower is not just a message to the Houthis, but also a message to Iran. And this is where I guess you can see the Iranian genius a little bit. They have created a so-called axis of resistance. They have funded groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis, and they use these groups to attack US interests and US allies in the region. But they also maintain a plausible deniability, always claiming that all these groups that are basically Iranian puppets, Iran always says that they are all acting independently whenever there's an attack. The genius of this strategy is that Iran can attack US interests, US warships, US carriers indirectly and then not fear retaliation as much because they always claim that they weren't behind the attack. But this time the message is clear. Iran needs to stop funding these terrorist groups or there's going to be a bigger escalation. Here we have Secretary of State Marco Rubio explaining that there's not going to be any compromise with the Houthis. Either they stop the attacks on the ships or the US military will make sure the attacks never happen again.
Well, first of all, the problem here is that this is a very important shipping lane, and in the last year and a half, the last 18 months, the Houthis have struck or attacked 174 naval vessels of the United States, attacking the U.S. Navy directly 174 times, and 145 times they've attacked commercial shipping. So we basically have a band of pirates, with guided precision anti-ship weaponry, and exacting a toll system in one of the most important shipping lanes in the world. That's just not sustainable. We are not going to have these people controlling which ships can go through and which ones cannot. And so your question is, how long will this go on? It will go on until they no longer have the capability to do that.
Well, what does U.S. intelligence tell us at this point? Because the U.S. had been conducting strikes for some time, but has not stopped the Houthis. So what's going to be different right now? Do you have more fidelity in the intelligence that would make this more successful?
Well, those strikes were retaliation strikes. So they launched one missile, we hit the missile launcher, or we sent something to do it. This is not a message. This is not a one-off. This is an effort to deny them the ability to continue to constrict and control shipping, and it's just not going to happen. We're not going to have these guys, these people with weapons able to tell us where our ships can go, where the ships of all the world can go, by the way. It's not just the U.S. We're doing the world a favor.
Yeah.
We're doing the entire world a favor by getting rid of these guys and their ability to strike global shipping. That's the mission here, and it will continue until that's carried out. That never happened before. The Biden administration didn't do that. All the Biden administration would do is they would respond to an attack. These guys would launch one rocket, we'd hit the rocket launcher. That's it. This is an effort to take away their ability to control global shipping in that part of the world. That's just not going to happen anymore.
And it could
this will continue until that's finished.
It could involve ground raids?
Well, those are military decisions to be made, but I've heard no talk of ground raids. I don't think there's a necessity for it right now. I can tell you that as of last night, some of the key people involved in those missile launches are no longer with us, and I can tell you that some of the facilities that they used are no longer existing, and that will continue. Look, it's bottom line, easy way to understand it, okay? These guys are able to control what ships can go through there. They've attacked the U.S. Navy 174 times.
Yeah.
They've attacked the United States Navy. We're not going to have people sitting around with the missiles attacking the U.S.
All the while, Iran is funding the axis of resistance to attack US allies in the region. Iran is also getting closer and closer to a nuclear weapon, especially with the help of North Korea, China, and Russia. Now, this is a red line for many countries in the Middle East, including Israel and Saudi, and it's also a red line for the United States across many different administrations, from Obama to Trump 1 to Biden to Trump 2. Now, this US stance makes perfect sense when you look at the Iranian foreign policy. It's just two sentences: death to America, death to Israel. So going back to that famous quote, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. And this time, United States is not taking any risk. This is why when President Trump got into the office, he actually asked the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to help the US negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran. Trump also in fact wrote a letter directly to the Iranian Ayatollah and IRGC where he offered them a chance to negotiate a way out of this precarious situation. He wanted to negotiate a new nuclear deal where Iran will pause enriching uranium, and in return US will lift sanctions on Iranian economy and Iranian oil industry. But the Ayatollah denied the request. So this all brings us to these strikes and all the firepower we have in the Middle East now. This is a message to Iran, and we also had the National Security Advisor sending a very direct message to the Iranian leadership. Listen to it yourself.
What the president has completely, as repeatedly said, is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. All options are on the table to ensure it does not have one, and that's all aspects of Iran's program. That's the missiles, the weaponization, the enrichment. They can either hand it over and give it up in a way that is verifiable, or they can face a whole series of other consequences. But either way, we cannot have a world with the Ayatollahs with their finger on the nuclear button. We cannot have a situation that would result in an arms race across the Middle East in terms of nuclear proliferation. And President Trump is determined one way or another. Iran has been offered a way out of this to make sure that we don't have a world that can be threatened by a radical regime, not only our ally Israel, but the entire world that would be threatened by a radical regime that could destroy not only Israel, but its neighbors, and have the capability to hit the United States. Martha, we cannot imagine a situation like that, and we're not going to have it.
Now moving on to Trump invoking the Alien Enemy Act of 1798. Trump administration claimed that they had to do this to facilitate the deportation of members of the TDA gang from Venezuela. The act was invoked on March the 15th, so 2 days ago. Then yesterday morning, even before most of us woke up, or at least before I woke up, we already had first group of members sent to El Salvador. But it was not without controversy. While the plane was in flight carrying the first group of members who were supposed to be transported to the El Salvador prisons, a federal judge ordered the flight to be returned. Now, as you can see from the tweet from the El Salvadorian president himself, by the time the order came, it was too late. The plane had already landed. Important to point out though, we don't exactly know if plane was already landed or was still in the air, but this did cause a big firestorm because it seemed like the administration was actively defying a judge's order. Luckily, we did get some explanation from the administration as to what exactly happened in the timeline of the events, and I'll read the statement to you guys and you decide who's in the right, who's in the wrong. But this case is heading to the Supreme Court, so we will have a final ruling from the Supreme Court. This is what the White House press secretary said. The administration did not refuse to comply with the court's order. The order, which had no lawful basis, was issued after terrorist TDA aliens had already been removed from the US territory. The return order and the administration's actions do not conflict. Moreover, as the Supreme Court has repeatedly made clear, federal courts generally have no jurisdiction over President's conduct of foreign affairs, his authorities under the Alien Enemies Act, and his core Article 2 powers to remove foreign alien terrorists from the US soil and repel a declared invasion. A single judge in a single city cannot direct the movements of an entire aircraft carrier full of foreign alien terrorists who were physically expelled from the US soil. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but based on the reports I read, the whole argument is that the judge who ordered the pause, he never actually put it in the report to have the plane returned. He said that verbally in the court to both the lawyers, and administration is saying that they followed whatever judge put it in writing to the T, but they didn't have to follow what he said verbally. Now, personally, this is definitely a case I'm going to follow in the Supreme Court. Let's see what the decision comes down. And if this is something you're interested in, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below to keep up with our future coverage on this topic. Lastly, as you guys know, over the last 2 weeks, few of our videos have been demonetized by YouTube for talking about sensitive topics and covering violent events. This is why recently we opened up memberships on the channel. This way you guys can directly support our content. Again, you don't have to do it. We'll continue making the videos, but if you enjoy the content and you're able to support us, you can do so by signing up for our membership. It costs less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and it's greatly appreciated.
Iran could now make enough nuclear material for a bomb in just 12 days now.
This
facility is quite large. It's big enough to house about 100,000 centrifuges.
And make no mistake, Iran will not be satisfied by a single nuclear bomb.
A few months ago, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency paid a visit to Iran. The reason for this visit was sinister. Just a few days earlier, news broke out that Iran may very well be close to acquiring nuclear weapons. Now, the fact that Iran is trying to do this is not particularly shocking. The first investigations into Iran's nuclear programs were already done 20 years ago. What is shocking, though, is how close Iran is. What the International Atomic Energy Agency found was that Iran possessed uranium enriched to 84%. For anyone that doesn't understand the ins and outs of nuclear science, it boils down to this. Iran can make nuclear bombs within 12 days if they wish to. And that's according to top US Defense Department officials, who are looking at the situation very closely. Now, you may think that this isn't that concerning. With the Russia-Ukraine war going on, there is more than enough to worry about when it comes to nuclear bombs. Moscow possesses the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world, with close to 6,000 nuclear warheads. But Iran getting nuclear bombs is very concerning. This change will shake the entire geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. You see, a lot of countries don't like it when Iran tries to make these powerful weapons. For one, Israel has said it would attack Iran in the scenario that it gets close to acquiring nuclear capabilities. Yes, Israel will actually send in fighter jets to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. And since Israel is a big military ally of the United States, you can see how this can go downhill very fast. The Middle East has been plagued by wars, many with the US involved in them. Add to that Iran's many enemies in the region, such as Saudi Arabia, and the chaos is complete. In this video, we're going to talk about how Iran getting nuclear weapons can spark a major conflict. We'll go over all the different parties involved in this potential disaster, and why Iran would even do this in the first place. And surprise, surprise, Russia might be helping out Iran. But Iran does have one more card up its sleeve: its newly found alliance with Russia. After the war in Ukraine started, Iran started to form a strategic alliance with Russia. The two countries haven't had the best relationship historically, because the Russian Empire has frequently attacked Iran. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, the nations have seen a significant shift in their relationship. After all, it's not surprising that the number 1 and 2 most sanctioned countries in the world are teaming up with each other. Both countries are facing economic and military pressures from the West, so forming an alliance makes a lot of sense. Iran has supplied Russia with hundreds of drones for the war in Ukraine, like the infamous Shahed 136 suicide drone. This drone has killed hundreds of people in Ukraine, and Tehran has also sent around 300,000 artillery shells and 1 million rounds of ammunition to their new ally. Since the middle of 2022, Iran has become Russia's top military backer. But the question is, why is the Iranian government choosing to do this in the first place? It's not that the main Iranian objective here is just to help Russia fight the war. Sure, Iran is an enemy of the West, just like Russia, so it prefers Russian victory over Ukrainian one. But the purpose of this military support to Russia is obviously for Iran to get something in return, and that's exactly what's happening. Iran wants billions of dollars worth of military equipment from Russia. This can include fighter jets, air defense systems, helicopters, and assistance with producing new warships. Undoubtedly, this will vastly improve Iran's defense capabilities. Iran has been isolated from the rest of the world, which means that its defense industry has always been one step behind other countries. Nations like Israel or Saudi Arabia now have cutting-edge military technology, partially because they could just buy the military equipment from other countries and take part in international arms trades. For a long time, Iran couldn't access this global marketplace. But Russia can prove to be a way out for the country. Although Russia doesn't have the best nor the biggest defense industry, the country accounts for more than a respectable 16% of all international arms exports. Russia's defense industry is a big one, and it produces tons of high-tech equipment. An example of this is the Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jet, which Iran would love to buy, and the military cooperation could go even further than just buying and selling military equipment. The two countries could share each other's military technology and actually start working together with their military programs. An example of such cooperation could be Iran's nuclear program. Russia can give Iran a helping hand with its nuclear goals. Historically, Russia has been a big partner of Iran's nuclear program, helping the country build nuclear reactors. But it's unlikely that Putin will just hand over some of his Russian nukes to Iran for military use. Even as a form of compensation for the useful support in the Ukrainian war, giving nukes would go a little too far. Putin wouldn't make himself too popular with countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, or the United Arab Emirates, which will damage Russia's international political position. However, when Russia secretly helps Iran with the research and development of things like delivery systems or nuclear warheads, Putin might get away with it. For example, Russia can share state-of-the-art missile technology with Iran. And believe it or not, it is in Russia's best interest to help Iran with getting nuclear capabilities. It would make Iran a lot stronger, and Iran is an ally of Russia's when it comes to fighting the United States. The United States is helping Ukraine in the war that Russia started, which turned out to be a massive issue for Putin. Ukraine is getting tons of high-tech weapons from the NATO alliance, like tanks and possibly even fighter jets. The war is turning out to be a tough fight for Russia, to say the least. When Iran gets nuclear weapons, though, well, this situation might change. Iran might get into a conflict with Israel, and tensions with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries will certainly rise. This will be a headache for the United States, to say the least, because it wants to protect its allies in the region. Good news for Putin, because this draws attention away from his war in Ukraine. The United States has a limited amount of high-tech equipment, so it will have to choose between Ukraine and its allies in the Middle East. Because it seems like a win-win situation for both Russia and Iran, Putin may actually secretly help Iran's nuclear weapons program. So, to wrap it all up, the story of Iran's 84% enriched uranium is a long and complicated one. Possessing nuclear weapons has been a dream of Iran's leaders, because it gives the country a lot of power for an aggressive foreign policy. This has a lot to do with Iran's enemies, such as the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. Iran is fighting two Cold Wars at once, and it's trying to get the US out of the Middle East. However, these countries that it's fighting won't let Iran get away with making nuclear bombs. Israel will even risk a war to prevent this from happening. But the Iranian government doesn't seem scared, as its leadership continues to push for a nuclear agenda by increasing the uranium enrichment level even more. If Iran is really developing a nuclear bomb, which is more than likely, the region is in a lot of peril. Iran and its enemies will be playing a dangerous game. Iran will continue to develop its nuclear capabilities, and Iran's enemies will do anything they can to stop it. This can go two ways. Either Iran's enemies will be successful in preventing an Iranian nuclear arsenal, or Iran actually gets the nukes it wanted in the first place. In the last scenario, there is no turning back. Iran will be free to execute its own agenda because no one will dare to stop a nuclear power. And Iran isn't the only one rooting for the last scenario to happen. Russia is as well. It turns out that Moscow's interests are aligned with Tehran's. This can be useful when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program, which the Russians could secretly help out with. No matter what the outcome is, this nuclear game can have fatal consequences. When the whole situation goes sideways, Iran might be heading to war.